Right now, you're wearing something, even if it's just pajamas or a robe you haven't thought twice about. You didn't debate it this morning, you just did it. The same way you do every day, the same way humans have done for longer than anyone can precisely date. And here's the strange part. Every human society ever documented, in every climate, on every continent, wears something. Not most, all. You'd assume the reasons are obvious: warmth, protection, modesty, except none of those are the real reason our ancestors started covering their bodies. Let's look at the timeline. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. But the physical evidence for clothing, bone needles, hide-scraping tools, doesn't show up until around 100,000 to 120,000 years ago at the earliest. That's a huge gap. For most of our species' existence, we were walking around bare-skinned under the African sun, so warmth can't be the starting point. It matters later, once humans pushed into colder latitudes, but it doesn't explain the origin. Then there's protection: thorns, insects, rough terrain. Sure, that's part of it. Here's the issue. If protection were the driving reason, the first coverings would have gone on the hands and feet, the parts that take the most physical damage. Instead, across nearly every early culture, the torso and groin got covered first, the parts least exposed to scrapes and bites. That's not a practical decision. That's something else entirely. So researchers went looking for a harder data point, and in 2003, a team of geneticists found one in an unlikely place: lice. Head lice live in hair. Body lice live only in clothing. They physically can't survive without fabric to cling to. By comparing the DNA of the two lice species, researchers estimated when they split into separate populations, the number they landed on roughly 1700,000 years ago. Not a guess based on a tool or a bead. A biological timestamp, written into a parasite that could only have evolved once humans were wearing clothes consistently. That's the oldest hard evidence we have for when the behavior was established, but it still doesn't tell us why. Here's what researchers have started to argue. Clothing wasn't primarily a survival tool. It was a cognitive one. In 2009, archaeologist Ian Gilligan proposed that the decision to cover the body reflects something deeper than practicality. It reflects the capacity to imagine a future self. To make and wear clothing, you have to picture yourself later, in conditions that don't exist yet, and prepare for them now. That's not instinct. That's forward planning, the same mental machinery involved in keeping a promise or dreading tomorrow. No other animal does this. A chimpanzee doesn't look at a leaf and imagine needing it next week. We did. But there's something even deeper underneath that. Something that rarely gets said out loud when this topic comes up. Shame. Not in the religious sense, in the neurological sense. The felt awareness that you're being watched, evaluated, seen. That requires what psychologists call theory of mind. The ability to step outside your own head and imagine how you look through someone else's eyes. Dogs don't have it. Even our closest primate relatives show only faint traces of it. But somewhere in our evolutionary past, humans developed the full version of it. And once that clicked, covering the body stopped being about the elements. It became about the gaze of other people. You can see how far that instinct travels once it takes hold. Look at cultures where warmth was never a factor at all. Parts of the Amazon, the Pacific Islands, places with no clothing need in a climate sense. People still marked their bodies. Paint, feathers, fiber, tattoos, beads. Something was always there. Because the body, once humans became self-aware, was never just a body anymore. That's when covering the self turns into something closer to language. Researchers studying this across cultures have noticed the impulse accelerates alongside social complexity. As groups grow larger, as hierarchies form, as strangers start encountering strangers who don't already know them. Before anyone spoke a word to you, what you wore told them who you were, which group you belonged to, whether you outranked them or answered to them. Clothing became one of the oldest communication systems humans ever built. Read before it's heard. Tomorrow morning you'll get dressed again, probably without a second thought. But underneath that routine, something roughly 170,000 years old is quietly running. You're not just choosing fabric. You're choosing how to be seen. And that instinct never stopped once it started.